Christopher Nolan's rendition of the Odyssey is one of the most disheartening things I have ever seen in my entire life. How can so much time, money, and effort be put into destroying one of the most noble and elevating stories ever composed? Rest assured, whatever Nolan produced is not the Odyssey. Okay, some of the characters have the same name and some of the stories have the same setup, but that is all there is. And funnily enough, when Yale's best, Lupita Nyong'o, criticized Homer for the lack of screen time women had in the original, she disregarded the fact that women have way more presence in the poem than in Nolan's Abomination. In my opinion, this can only be the work of a petty, resentful, and pretentious hack. And I have a theory, which is that Nolan did not read the Odyssey, but got cliff notes probably from countless sophists. He has not the faintest idea of what this epic poem actually tells. But this is probably all his brain is capable of processing after years of methane poisoning from smelling his own farts. Allegedly. So saying goddess, Odysseus' rage, black and murderous that causes so much suffering, but this shit is about to get very autistic. Let's go! Whatever Nolan made is devoid of the essence of the poem. There are no gods. The characters who tell stories throughout the Odyssey are stripped of all storytelling capabilities. The women are completely cast aside. And Odysseus is not the ingenious man we know, but rather... So let me explain. Number 1, dude, where's my god? The real story of the Odyssey opens with the gods, specifically Athena, who is investigating the whereabouts of Odysseus. She's so worried about this mighty and noble hero that she even questions her own father, the all-powerful Zeus, asking why Odysseus is not back home yet. Has he put a curse on the Greek that prevents him from returning home? And Zeus replies, no. I thought he was back already. I mean, he angered Poseidon for blinding his son, you know, the Cyclops, but I don't know. So Athena embarks for Ithaca and inspires Odysseus' son, Telemachus, to become the man his reign needs him to be. Athena is quintessential to the story. She's the one helping every noble man along the way to make Odysseus return to Ithaca, to his own people, to his wife, to his son, to his family. Now, I will dare to say that she's as important to the story as Odysseus himself. Of course, this is completely lost in Nolan's Abomination, where Zendaya is not inspiring noble actions in humans, but mostly judging with an empty expression. You know, Zendaya style. In ancient Greece, the gods were so important that this fundamental poem starts with them. The story happens because of the gods. And to repeat myself, they are as important as Odysseus. In fact, almost everything happens because of them. You see, when we first see Odysseus alone and sad on the island held by Calypso, he has no intention of letting him go. So that's why Zeus intervenes and orders Calypso to release her captive and assist in his return to his country. And wouldn't you know it? Calypso obeys. But in Nola's Fetid Fest, she takes pity on him and lets him go after psychoanalyzing him. I mean, how can you write this crap? Now, to me, this looks even more ridiculous when the promotion of this movie has been Defy the Gods. First of all, how can you defy something that has almost no screen time whatsoever? But if Nolan had read the Odyssey, he would have found very quickly that the gods do nothing but work with humans. And I will defend this theory because in Book 1 alone, there are countless demonstrations of this. Verse 16, the gods have already decreed that Odysseus should return to Ithaca. His only obstacle among the heavens is Poseidon. Verse 35, Hermes explicitly warned Aegisthus not to pursue Clytemnestra and not to murder Agamemnon. And Aegisthus defied this divine warning, resulting in Orestes killing him in retribution. Verse 66, Zeus recognizes Odysseus as divine-like, a man above all others, explicitly praising the gifts and offerings Odysseus made before leaving Troy. Zeus clarifies that Poseidon's rage is isolated. It is so likely because Odysseus blinding his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. I went full autistic on this, man, and there are several more examples throughout the poem, but if I name them all, this will be a year-long video. But rest assured, more examples of this will come later.
You have my word.
You see, one of the problems that I have with this stupid idea of defying the gods is that the ancient Greek world is filled with stories about the dangers of defying the gods, which in essence means to defy nature itself. The idea here is not to go against nature, but to work with it for mutual benefit. And it also means that there are limits to what humans can do or achieve, and that those limits must be respected. So what is Nolan's basis for defying gods throughout his fetid fest of a movie? None. Zero. There's no explanation, just a random quote of, "I will defy the gods." But that is it. It is not shown. So, not only this pretentious man probably didn't read the Odyssey, allegedly, but he didn't even try to learn about and study the ancient world. And maybe this is why he produced one of the most idiotic and snobbish phrases.
When you look at the ancient world, people tend to view it in weird ways. There's a lot of cultural prejudice. There's a lot of, they're sort of elevating it because it's old, whatever it is. When you go to the poem, what you find is something that's really earthy and grounded and accessible. And so for me, in building the world of the film, what I talk to all the actors about is like...
Unfortunately, I have spent the better part of the last 20 years dealing with this kind of pretentious doorknobs. So what he probably means is, people don't understand the Odyssey. I do. And this is why the movie is how it is. If you don't get it, it's only because you're dumb. Go fuck yourself. And for all the where all the women talk, you had the opportunity to give Athena the central role she actually plays in the Odyssey. But you decided to cast her aside, which brings me to my next point. Number 2. Women out. I have another theory, and that is that Nolan hates women and sees them as useless pawns. Allegedly. That's why it's so funny to see Nepo baby Lupita Nyong'o act so boastfully, showcasing her sheer ignorance about the Odyssey, while she vomits the talking points they gave to her. Because women in Nolan's movie are cast aside, whereas in the real Odyssey, they have a predominant central role. And I'm not referring only to Athena, but Penelope, Calypso, Circe, and Nausicaa. You see, Penelope is a symbol of resistance and resilience. She keeps a household that is being constantly attacked by savage suitors, and it takes her ingenuity, courage, and determination to do what she does. But Nolan sees her as an old hag who can't control her emotions and is one sober afternoon away from a nervous breakdown. She's not noble. She complains the power is not bestowed upon her, despite having been the sole reigning monarch for 20 years. But the real Penelope is cunning, strong, and determined, an absolute role model of what a person should aspire to be. Anne Hathaway is the absolute opposite. And then we have Circe, the witch who in Nolan's mind complains about men, their words, and their hunger, and whines and whines and whines.
I'm not a whiner!
So let's make something very clear. Circe does turn some of Odysseus' men into pigs. But when Odysseus, aided by Hermes, sways Circe's magic and confronts her with his sword, she realizes that this is no ordinary man. She sees a divine-like virtue in him, and so she receives him and his men as guests in her palace for a full year, returning the men to their human form and making them younger and stronger as a consolation.
Losers always whine about their best.
Calypso is another fascinating character in the real Odyssey. This is a woman who is absolutely in love with Odysseus and holds him captive for years. She's even ready to make him immortal. But Odysseus can't take this anymore. He wants one thing and one thing only, and that is to return to his wife, his son, and his own land. But whatever happens in Nolan's fetid fest between Calypso and Odysseus is not based on the poem, but on whatever cuck fetish he has, allegedly. And finally, there's Nausicaa, who actually didn't make the cut into Nolan's abomination. In my opinion, she's the last one to save Odysseus because, aided by Athena, she dreams of being married and goes to wash her clothes by the shore, where her servants find Odysseus. I guess this is a traveling character because she wants to become a wife? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with wanting to get married. I mean, there are even women who cosplay for their birthdays. Number 3. Oh, Odysseus, where art thou? I have no idea who the main character of this wankfest of a movie is. I mean, they call him Odysseus, but there's no trace of him whatsoever. Only
Matt Damon.
Odysseus is known for his ingenuity, for being capable of understanding things better than anyone else. What this means is that this man is not just creative and capable, but also very intelligent. You see, the audacity of the Trojan horse is one of the most significant symbols that are still with us after more than 3,000 1,000 years. But Nolan made Odysseus feel sorry for himself for being ingenious. It's like making Batman hate himself for having money, being strong, and being smart. At first, the Duke thought the history of Bruce Wayne and Batman as a white male would present an obstacle. Bruce Wayne historically has been a product of white privilege. It's almost been his superpower, his wealth. That felt like its own wall to me. How do I connect to a character who's so grounded in his whiteness?
Why are you so fucking stupid?
You see, in the real Odyssey, Odysseus is tired and sad because he has been suffering for so long during his return to Ithaca, and the thing his heart desires the most is to be reunited with his family. For nothing is greater or better than this, when man and wife dwell in a home in one accord, a great grief to their foes and a joy to their friends, but they know it best themselves. I wonder why the feminist Emily Wilson, who destroyed the Odyssey in her translation, hated it so much. Such a mystery. I have to say it. Nolan always struck me as someone who was very good at muddying the waters to avoid appearing shallow. And when he has the opportunity to show the world his sole writing capabilities as the only credited writer of the Odyssey, he presents an Odysseus completely devoid of character, of presence, and most importantly, of intelligence. Characters are as intelligent as the people who write them. So let Nolan's Odyssey be the most expensive infomercial that warns the world about the dangers of methane poisoning. You can end up like him. Allegedly. Throughout the almost 3 hours of this crap, I couldn't identify a single moment in which Odysseus will strike me as an intelligent man. For example, in the real Odyssey, when they become prisoners of the Cyclops Polyphemus, Odysseus gains his attention and curiosity with his oratory after a long conversation. Odysseus proves that he's capable of keeping a stiff upper lip in the most dire of times and even conversing as if he were at a banquet. And so he gifts his captor with copious amounts of wine, which renders the Cyclops drunk and tired. So this was the opportunity he needed to blind him and ultimately escape. But Nolan changes everything. In his version, the Cyclops goes to sleep of his own accord and never talks to Odysseus. In fact, after they blind him, he speaks for the first time, claiming vengeance from his father, Poseidon. And that's when one of the diverse men says, "Whoa, he can talk! Why didn't he talk to us?" And someone else more diverse responds to the effect of, "Would you talk to ants?" I mean, that depends on your level of autism. I mean, let's be clear about that. What I like about the real Odyssey is that it shows a monster who is well articulated, intelligent, and almighty. And to me, that's what makes him so terrifying. Whereas Nolan's Abomination is nothing but a dumb beast with nothing special about him except being huge and, well, you know, a Cyclops. And another thing is the ending. In the real Odyssey, Odysseus returns to Ithaca, reestablishes order in his house, reunites with his father, and connects him with his son Telemachus. They are united at last and ready for a final battle against the families of the suitors Odysseus killed. But that fight never takes place, because the gods intervene once again, putting an end to this continuous blood spill. But in Nolan's fantasy, the ending is also subverted. Matt Damon decided to exile himself for having fought a war for his country. I mean, what kind of leftist fantasy is this? I mean, it's been a decade of Hollywood's ridiculous attempts to demoralize us all, and it still fascinates me how they fail over and over. I mean, what Nolan did to Odysseus is the same as what Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, and Jar Jar Abrams did to Luke Skywalker. Deconstruct and change the character completely, turning him into a sut little cook. Talking about projecting oneself, huh, Noli? Allegedly. Number 4. United Colors of Greece. So much has been said about the absurdity of the casting choices, but I can't finish my review without adding my comments. So one might ask, why does it matter if Helen of Troy, Clytemnestra, or Odysseus soldiers don't look white or Greek, but rather like they're from Kenya, Japan, or India? Like, what does it matter with that? Why can't people from those countries play a part in a motion picture? And that sentiment is lovely, but art is not about fulfilling your moral needs. If you make a film that intends to portray the ancient civilization of Greece, you should try to study how that civilization was and how their people looked. If the movie is about 17th century feudal Japan and then I see people wearing 1930s suits, well, it breaks my suspension of disbelief and it takes me out of your narrative. But you can only get away with it if the people who watch it ignore that 17th century Japanese people didn't wear pantsuits.
If those kids could read, they'd be very upset.
With casting actors who look Indian and sub-Saharan African, the whole fantasy just breaks apart. But there might be something even more perverse in this case, because Nolan doesn't even try to explain how Travis Scott or Lupita have made it to high society in ancient Greece. Therefore, we must accept that whatever he puts in front of us, basically he wants us to be Jim Carrey in Me, Myself, and Irene.
Charlie, just between you and me, do you ever notice that your kids have sort of a year-round tan?
And for the discussion about representation and that there are no Greek actors in the movie, I couldn't care less. It's verisimilitude and internal logic that I care about. The only place where I believe I need representation is in National Congress, not in a movie. Because you could make a Greek tragedy with an all-black cast and it will work. Actually, Italian filmmaker Pier Paolo Pasolini had this idea back in the 70s when he made the documentary Note Towards an African Orestes. The Orestiad is a story of how Orestes killed Aegisthus and Clytemnestra for killing his father Agamemnon, and it's one of the most famous trilogies by Aeschylus. And this works because it would be the same story but in Africa with people who, you know, come from that continent. The same thing happened to Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet from 1996, in which Harold Perrineau plays Mercutio. And do you know why that works? Because it is set in modern Miami. It makes total sense. But an Indian making it to the Trojan War? Believe you me, it would have been a famous story. I can't respect a filmmaker who disrespects the intelligence of his audience, who says that people think about the ancient world in weird ways because he's the only one capable of understanding it. Go fuck yourself, Nolan. Allegedly. And this is a result of mixing everything without a clear direction. You get United Colors of Benetton, modern English, clothes that look bought from H&M, and the subversion of the real story ends up looking like this.
I, King Arthur, declare Zorro the new King of England. Yes! From the Z to the O, to the double R road.
Congratulations, Nolan. You have lived long enough to become a parody from The Simpsons. Number 5. Redeemable Aspects. Now, would I venture to say that there is nothing good about this almost 3-hour-long turd? No, there is. I mean, the way Cersei turns the man into pigs like clay is very well done. I mean, kudos to whoever got the idea. And Robert Pattinson shows he is a fine actor. This man was the best thing about this movie, in my opinion. And of course, I mean, guys, Travis Scott as a bard, it's amazing. This man is truly a poet. Nah, I'm kidding. He sucks like the entirety of this fucking movie. And that's it. I saw this movie last night and I can't remember anything else I will say I liked. What a waste, man. My conclusion on Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is that I have my serious doubt that he even read the original poem. Whatever he presents on the screen is nothing like the real Odyssey. You know, the one that is still with us after almost 3,000 years. And I don't think that Nolan's rendition will survive long enough, but he showed his true colors, those of a pretentious hack who struggles to tell even a simple story. He took a slum dunk of a text and reduced it to a sad little fetty fest. And to that I have to say, go fuck yourself, Malaka. And that's all I have to say about that.